order. Any additions or corrections to the agenda that anybody knows of? Okay. Okay.
Larry, did you want the Schaefer versus Lease complaint on this agenda? I didn't see it on there.
Oh, yes. Yes, I forgot about that. Yes.
As old business, I would say add that.
Yep. So, okay, good thing you caught that, because I did not. Okay. Minutes from the previous meetings, May 13th. Is there a motion to approve
Oh, I
that?
bet this is Al Sauter. Let me catch him.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is.
Al? Al, are you Al?
I am.
I'm Tammy.
I'm just gonna next door.
Okay,
6:30.
yep, I just wanna make sure you didn't think you're at the wrong place.
No.
Okay.
I'm just-
Okay. Devin
Hey.
just pulled up.
Yeah. Is there a motion to approve the May 13th regular meeting minutes?
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. May 23rd special meeting. That's where we met with the attorneys to go over the decision of the judge. Morning, Devin.
Yeah.
Okay, second.
I'll second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. June 5th, that would have been when we met with Brian and I and Devin met with the commissioners to go over this lawsuit deal. Is there a motion to approve that one?
I wasn't there, so I shouldn't. I'll vote.
Okay. Second? Devin, your turn.
Okay.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carried. Open mic. Gary, you have anything?
No, just
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll just wheel right into the Hurdsfield Project. Any updates with that, Thomas?
No new updates. Working with Brian when he has questions, he's kind of been getting up to speed with some of the the equipment out there. So I'm kind of working with him on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Larry, did you guys go out there and work on that? The game man? Because when the sulfate levels were so high at that one, all of a sudden I figured maybe you guys went out there because, you know, we talked, you were gonna take the, and all of a sudden they dropped from that erratic number down to what was normal again. So I don't know if something was just,
Maybe something stuck in there or something.
yeah.
Probably. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, I have not had a chance to take that.
They were sitting, that conductivity was up at like 4,700 and then all of a sudden it was down to 2,700.
Mhm.
At one time, I don't know which time it was I looked at it, and I figured maybe you guys got out there.
Mhm. No, not yet. You want to just give us a brief update on what you've been doing out there to this point, or since the last meeting?
I guess I turned them on May 21st, and I got it down here. May 21st, I turned them on. May 27th, the conductivity was rising, so I slowed them down to 1,100 gallons a minute. And then June 2nd, I shut them down. The sulfate levels were high, so that's really what transpired with it.
Okay. As far as keeping a log, we really don't need to keep a log on that since the computer's doing that itself, correct, Thomas?
Technically you don't have to, but it is good to keep a log
Okay.
of that. I mean, it's kind of you can trust, something can always happen to that computer or, that information. It's best to have just a log and keep up to date on that.
Okay.
If we have a spreadsheet that I have that information and I'll enter this information on that. And I'll probably forward that spreadsheet on to Brian just so he can get familiar with it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because we want to make sure that we get it done right. So, okay.
Turned off now.
Yeah. Alrighty, anything else with Hurdsfield? If not, we'll move into the Harvey Dam inspection update. You were gonna check into finding somebody to do some of that stuff. Have you had any luck?
No,
Really?
no.
Okay.
I've only reached to one person so far, and that was Alex, and he didn't have time to do that Alex bike, so. It's some small equipment, but no.
Mhm.
I know I said I maybe would have made us not the best interest, but
Right.
no, not yet. But
Okay.
I can reach to a couple more.
Would, Mark Freed, and is it his son that works with him?
Well, Kevin, yeah,
Okay,
he maybe would,
okay,
maybe.
okay.
I can ask him.
Because basically we need to get the vegetation, like the tree stuff, killed off.
Yeah. He doesn't have any like big equipment. I don't know that he would have to have any big equipment to do that.
No, 'cause the stuff's pretty small.
Yeah,
I think, just basically just get them killed.
yeah. I can ask him.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Okay,
I'd be surprised if you wouldn't take that on.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and there's also that, is it Paul the Dick?
Right.
Does some of that stuff too?
I don't have the agenda sheet right now, so I don't know. The agenda sheet?
Okay,
Yeah, I can try both actually.
Okay. okay. Alrighty. Culvert inspections, I have not done anything with that as far as reviewing through that stuff yet. So I'll try and get that done here before the next meeting. Okay, public comment rules for regular meeting. Do you want to go through that real quick, Kale?
You bet. So I circulated a draft policy to comply with Senate Bill 2180. This is the Senate bill that says all government bodies, including water boards, have to have a written policy now for how they allow for public comments at their regularly scheduled meetings. And so I just took the Senate bill and basically drafted a minimum policy to meet the requirements of what's in the bill. If you read through it, in my opinion, I think we were already doing this. The Senate bill just requires us to have a written policy about it. So it says that the secretary is going to maintain either a public comment or open mic on the agenda of every regular meeting. The statute allows for some limitations, like if we're holding a public hearing, we can ask that person to wait till the public hearing to make comments about that topic. Also, the public comments can be limited to either what's on the current meeting's agenda or the previous past agenda. If we've got a full agenda or a bunch of people wanting to make public comment, then the board can put time restrictions on a time limit per speaker or a total time limit that we're gonna hear public comments at the meetings. We've never had that problem, but if something were to come up contentious and we were to experience that problem, this policy would allow for it, and that's called for in the statute itself. And then at the bottom, I just want to point out in paragraph 7, enforcement is by the chair. So if someone feels that a comment is inappropriate or it's exceeding a time limit that the board has set for a meeting, it's defamatory, it's abusive, it's harassing, let any board member raise that when ordered to the chair, and the chair retains authority to control the meeting, and they can limit the comment or allow folks to move on. The statute does also have this requirement that speakers identify themselves by submitting their name and address in writing. Tammy asked me a question about how that works mechanically, and my opinion is if we know someone's name and address, Gary, not to pick on you, but since you're online today, again, it's probably hard to submit your name and address in writing online. But I think from the testimony at the hearing, that's really there to prevent someone from showing up and refusing to say who they are or what their interest is in front of the governing body, which apparently was an issue that some school boards were having when they brought this forward. So I'm of the opinion that if we know the person's name and address, that's enough for Tammy to put it in the minutes. And as long as we know that, someone doesn't have to actually provide it in writing. But if someone we didn't know were to show up then it's in the policy, it'd be appropriate for Tammy to get their name and address so she can put it in the minutes. So if the board's ready to act on it, you can just do so by approving it by motion today. But if you have any questions or want to make any changes, that's certainly appropriate too.
Okay, I would have one question, Gary. If they would, or Gary, Kale, if they were to, obviously we'll ask for the name and address if we don't know them. If they refuse to give that, do we have the right to refuse to let them speak as well?
Yes, yep, because then they would not be compliant with the policy.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on this?
So I mean, if they refuse to do that, we can kick them off the monitor.
Yeah, we'll just ask them, just tell them that they can't speak. So, this would have been a good one for the city not too long ago, huh? Things got a little out of hand at the last city council meeting, but.
In Harvey?
No, here in Vesna.
Oh, I said, okay.
Yeah, so. Anyway, I guess, if no further questions, I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve this policy. Second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right. You want me to sign this one or you got one you want me to sign, Tammy?
I'll go through this afterwards.
Okay,
Sign it.
good enough. Sounds good. Okay, moving into new business, conflict waiver for tile permit. I gave Kale permission.
Or do you want to do Schaefer versus lease complaint? That was old business.
Yes. Jeff Schaefer called me again here not so long ago with, complaining about leases with their tile pumps on 15 out here. The water's running where it's not supposed to be running. And I was out there and looked at some of this yesterday. As you will see some of the erosion stuff on the tile pumps in these pictures that Tammy had printed off.
So in the very back of your packet, there's pictures.
It is, Kale, you're pulling that up right now?
Yeah, this is so the complaint was alleging a non-compliant drain in the southeast quarter of 8, which is the Richard lease property. And that tile system and pump is under permit. The permit application, when you sign it, says in there, I attest that the application is true as I intend the design of the system. And then this downstream flow map was submitted with that tile permit application. So according to the application, the intent was for that pump to cross Highway 15 where the culvert is, and then it goes right into the Oak Creek, I believe, assessment drain right here.
Yep.
But instead what's happening is rather than going through that culvert, it's backflowing here towards this private approach.
Is that one of those cases that we should kind of like do with the case that we had here about a year and a half ago? Just get the permission from the state to block off that approach?
Yeah, that's my recommendation is work with NDOT to get, permission to put someone has already put a flat gate on the west side. Get permission from NDOT to put a flat gate on the east side. Because it's not clear, there's nothing in Century Code that says, directly or unquestionably that if the downstream flow isn't flowing as represented, that's the responsibility of the applicant. It's probably a good argument that it is, but it's an argument. And, I asked Larry, what do you think is the cause of that flow? Is it something that's being done intentionally by Richard, or is it something that just isn't working the way the water is designed to flow? And Larry, it sounds like you felt like it was the latter, where just the road ditch is just not graded the way it should be. There's a culvert there, but NDOT, doesn't have a grade there. And I could see Richard saying, well, the water's supposed to flow that way, but that's NDOT's responsibility. And he may or may not be right about that. I'm not saying either way, but if there's there's a solution that you can get a permit from NDOT for that solves this for Jeff, to me, that's a more amicable way than getting in a fight over whether or not this is technically, a violation of Title 61.
I did get permission from the DOT in Devil's Lake, Wyatt Hansen, to do some grading work in that ditch, but it is just like a swamp out there now, because all that water is getting pumped in there and it's not going anywhere, or isn't running out properly. So I don't know if there'll be an option this summer for them to get in there and grade that so it works correctly or not. But I have been in contact with Eric Lease on this situation numerous times. So, but I think we'll probably approach it from the standpoint of getting a flap gate on the other side of that culvert at the quarter line, so that water can't come this, go west. So I will work on that.
And then do you want Tammy just to leave this on the agenda as old business for now until it's either withdrawn or resolved?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
That way we don't forget it as well. Okay, with that, I think since we're on that subject of towel pumps and stuff like that, you guys see the pictures that were taken with the erosion problem that's out east of town. And I just took these because this obviously is right along the highway, but there is also some other ones that we didn't have the option of putting in a, what do you call it? I can't even think of it right now. When we issue the tile permit conditions, the conditions of the tile permit, where they have to control the erosion and stuff, we didn't have that option a few years ago. I think that just came in 2021 session, or was that 2023? It's 2021.
I think 21.
Anyway, I did reach out to Derek Ellingson. I haven't received any call back from him. Is when they design these things, if there's a way that they could, increase the size of the mats to handle the water that's, like this one with the double pipes that you see, that was just stuck in. If that's a 10 horse pump, that's like 1,200 gallons a minute when it's pumping full bore. Well, that little mat that's there is not going to take very long, and it's going to start eroding around it. So, but, so yeah, I don't know how we're going to handle this, but obviously something has got to, because the top picture is on the south side of the highway, and it's just some massive erosion on there. In fact, you can see I had another picture that maybe didn't come through with all the dirt
Larry,
washed in a ditch.
Is it a state highway or county highway?
It's state.
I mean, I would think in those situations where the permit doesn't have a clear condition that says, the applicant will on an ongoing basis be responsible for erosion at the outlet, the road authority would have a lot of say and power there, and if the pump is into the road right away and it's eroding that. So, I wonder if you're talking to DOT already about that flat gate, maybe sharing this with them and seeing if it's something they can address might help too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Thomas and I talked a little bit about, some options. What are some better options to eliminate this problem? Because obviously the amount of tile pumps that are out there is increasing every year, and we're going to have the same issue when we start. They're dumping into all these drains as well. So, but anyway, Thomas, did you have any ideas on different erosion control methods that you've seen working with some of this?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different methods of erosion control, and they're all good within the right design parameters of that erosion control method. Those rubber mats are probably good for certain instances, and larger rubber mats would be applicable to maybe some of these locations also. You know, there's rock riprap that's, you know, pretty standard, and that's been a well-known method for many years. There's also some newer, simpler, easier to install methods like those rubber mats. And then there's these articulated concrete blocks. I know they use those a lot. 20, 30 years ago, they've kind of gotten away from those with DOT projects and county projects, but that's another method. Certain applications, turf reinforcement mat, but then you need the vegetation to grow through it. So it's all in the correct application and design. There's many different methods.
Because I did look at one other one on the way, because there's numerous ones along Highway 15 now. I think there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, I think, along Highway 15 in a kind of a short area. And where they have the rubber mats going out into the ditch farther, where it gets flat when it comes off the mat, that seems to work pretty well. But I think we're going to have to approach it through the tiling company itself, because I talked to somebody about this and they said, well, who's going to pay for that? It's like, well, okay, it's your tile system. You should be the one paying for it. But anyway.
Yeah, one size doesn't fit all for all applications. So it works in some, and not in all. You might need to extend those rubber mats a little bit further, and yeah.
Okay. I'll talk with the DOT as well, and I'll wait for Derek Ellingson to get back to me with that as well too. I don't know, as far as getting this erosion stuff, you know, taken care of, what's going to be our approach with this? You know, that's already damaged the road ditches and stuff and washed into our drains as well. Any ideas? Because obviously Century Code doesn't really give us much to go on there.
Well, there is nothing on the permit that indicates that they have to take care of damages.
Well, it says that,
Oh,
but,
yeah.
but there's nothing in Century Code
To enforce.
to really enforce it. That's the problem. They make these laws, but there's no teeth in them. You know, so it makes it extremely difficult to.
Well, there's not a whole lot we can do then, I mean, other than follow what the Century Code says and what, I mean, if we have it on our permit, we can suggest it, I mean, I guess if they refuse to, there ain't a whole lot we can do about it, is there, until somebody changes the law?
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Kale?
Well, yeah, so, you know, we just had the Richard Lease permit pulled up on that Schaefer complaint. And one of the conditions there is that the applicant should install and maintain erosion protection at the project outlet. So I think in these systems that are permitted, you know, have Tammy pull the permit and see if that is a permit that's got that condition. If it doesn't, and the issue is erosion in the road right away, I think we have to raise that to the road authority and say, yes, it's a tile system, but it's either unpermitted or it's not a permit that, you know, it was allowed to include this condition. So you have to address it as road authority. It's a damage to your infrastructure. Where it's our assessment drain, you know, I think one thing I've seen other water boards do is, you know, we send a letter saying, here's an issue, it's impacting our infrastructure. We're going to repair this one time, but you're on notice now. Next time this causes money, it's going to be your cost. And, you know, you put them on notice that they get one freebie, but we're monitoring it, and they better monitor it too and take care of it. And then I think going forward, you know, when these applications come in, Thomas, I don't know if based on the offsite data, you're able to make a recommendation, and we can certainly include a little more detail in that erosion protection outlet condition to say, we can already say that you have to maintain erosion protection. I don't think it's a stretch for us to dictate or say what is a recommended appropriate erosion control. That puts folks on notice that if they don't do a recommendation and there is a problem, then I think you do have enforcement authority, and you could go back to that tile system and say, either fix this or we'll shut the system off. But that's a prospective idea. That doesn't fix everything that's already been permitted, and it also doesn't fix anything that's under 80 acres.
Right. Okay. What are your guys' thoughts? Well, I think we gotta get it, we need to stop it now, if we can get something into our protocol that from here on out, because otherwise this will get to be a huge problem. Yeah, I mean, we can't fix what's already been done, but it's going forward, I think we need to have something in our bylaws that puts teeth into this if possible. But my opinion of it. What are your guys' thoughts as far as, dealing with the companies like Ellingson's and stuff, and they, excuse me, and they're designing these and they're gonna dump into a highway right away, or they're gonna dump into one of our assessed drains, that you gotta meet a certain standard as far as the erosion control protection for that. Do we have that option to do something like that so this doesn't become a problem?
I think it's worth the conversation, Larry. I've sat in a lot of those legislative hearings on tile permitting amendments, and Levi always gets up, and when the question is raised about using road right-of-way outlets, he talks about how Ellingson's intention isn't to hurt public infrastructure and that they take care of those things. So I think you got to lean in on those companies, especially when they have a big sign by the pump that everybody drives by, and then there's a big gully downstream of it that doesn't look great for the company either. So
yep.
I would think they would take this seriously.
Okay, I think that's an easier avenue than anything. Get it done right to start with instead of just throwing down that little rubber mat and calling it good. But I'll work on that some more. Have that conversation with Derek when he calls me back.
In the meantime, for going forward, I don't think there's anything that would stop us. I don't think we have to adopt a policy, but when we adopt a motion approving a tile permit, and we say, includes the condition that the applicant install and maintain erosion protection at the project outlet. Thomas, would you be able on each of those to put a recommendation that we can copy and paste into that letter to say, the board recommends something no less than the following?
Yeah, we could do no less than the following, and something of that nature is just every outlet would be unique, and it's coming up with a standard that would fit all of those, I think, would be the biggest part. And maybe it's following some sort of, like governing agency design standard where, DOT or something of that nature.
Okay.
And like, like I said, rubber mats are good. It's just, once you extend that water beyond that mat, surface drainage, that flow velocity or flow depth beyond that mat, it becomes an issue. Or with it also.
Maybe raise that with Derek too, Larry, because if you let him know the board's considering making a recommendation as to a minimum requirement on each application, that's who that's going to impact, is your contractors. And what I'm envisioning is you make the recommendation. If they do something different, but there's no problem, either because they're maintaining it or watching it, or because whatever they went with works, then there's no problem. There's no action. But if they don't take a recommendation and then there's erosion and they're not fixing it, well, now we've got something in writing saying, we recommended this because that little rubber mat wasn't going to work, and it turns out we were right. Now you got to do something about it.
Okay. Okay, in the meantime, do we just send, some of these people a letter that, they need to address that? I think, that's the least that we need to do right now. Cause I've talked to, them out east of town, several times about this, and, nothing has been done to this point yet, so.
Yeah, I think a letter is a good idea, saying, the complaint has been raised with the Water Resource Board, rather than have to investigate this formally. We're putting you on notice and hoping that you'll do the right thing and take care of this as soon as possible.
And you have the question too, is how far away is the erosion? You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, you got the rubber mat, and you're within, minimal here, but do you say, well, you cause an erosion a quarter mile down the road?
No. I think it's just, where the problem is just immediately right by the,
out of the pump.
yeah, right out of the pumps. That's where the problem comes in. Because once it gets into the ditch, it just flows with the other water. It's no big deal.
When I see these little mats they put up, the first thing they can do is make that mat 3 times the size it is for
Oh,
starters.
definitely.
I mean, just put that out there. It's like, quit putting these little mats down there. Grease that 3 times the size for starters.
Yeah, and that's the conversation I'm gonna have with Derek. Because, there's one, the first one you come to east of Pheasant here. No, the second one. You come to, those mats are extended out farther, and, no, it's not that one. It's out by the Bremen Road. No, it's out by Louis Schaefer's place, if you guys know where that's at. There, those mats go just about to the bottom of the ditch. No erosion whatsoever.
I don't think some of these are hard to fix, but no, those little mats.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
It's a complete joke. And Ellingson should know better than that.
Yeah.
What's another $1,000 on $100 and some thousand dollar project or whatever it ends up to be? So.
Larry, there is also a standard permit condition that, when you asked the question about downstream, that kind of reminded me of this. I think everything we've been talking about is focused on what's right at the outlet, but there is a standard condition in statute that says if a downstream landowner or road authority presents substantial evidence that a tile system directly has caused accumulation of silt, vegetation, erosion, or scouring, you can add the requirement that the applicant remove the silt and vegetation or repair the erosion and scour damages directly caused by the system. So that's probably a little broader, would certainly include what's at the outlet, but even further downstream. We could start adding that condition, because I think that very clearly would allow us to address this prospectively.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion that we start sending letters to some of these people? Okay, is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, we will move into Al's complaint here, since he is here, and it's past 7:30 as well. You want to come up and have a seat right here at the table, please?
Sorry. Looks like I'm all numbered.
We're pretty
How's your
harmless.
I'm going to have you sign this. This just gives the water board the ability to review your complaint.
Right now.
Yeah, I don't give you a copy. Okay.
So I guess you all know who I am, right? So I'm here to listen to you.
I guess we're going to ask a couple questions for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
We received a complaint from you, and in here you state that it's too complex to describe in its limited space. So I would just ask that you would describe your complaint, and you got picked photos as well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she should be able to, yeah, she's got it.
Okay.
So, yeah, my complaint is,
it's been in my family now for 4 generations. So it hasn't been a problem, you know, it's like every spring it's close to the river.
Mhm.
But most of the years you could farm, till everything but about 22 acres. So, right now, it's, hasn't produced a top down in 3 years. So I wanna know when these, started, pumping, doing the tiling. And then, cause I got a lot of facts, so.
Mhm.
But in here, I got 160 acres that's totally unusable right now. Hasn't been seeded now for 3 years. Can't do it right, hasn't seeded yet today.
Okay. Would you mind walking up to the screen and kind of pointing out where the location that we're talking about here?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, you know, so who's running it?
The attorney is.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And
So-
Kale is the attorney at the top, and Thomas Demke is our engineer. Second photo down.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, section 27.
can you zoom in on section 27, Cal?
Yeah, we can't hear Al at the screen because it's far from the mic, so you might just have to help us out, Larry.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Watch the cord go in.
Yeah, watch the cord in front of the TV there on the floor.
I think this is the Souter property, southeast of 27.
Yeah, 20.
Okay.
Section 27, yeah.
And that's what's outlined in yellow,
Right
correct?
here, right.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
So, this was all farmed before, and this probably wasn't the best. But, here it's like a week ago when I sent these pictures, it was like, whole thing was underwater. And it was like a river. It was being pumped from here. It was like a river running down here. And, I got pictures of all that, so it's hard to explain it. And I've got a lot of people that have fallen over and taken pictures too. But they're not gonna help you guys today, but anyway, and then you got Wickerly pumping over here. And that all runs down and aggravates all that too. So when I find out the dates that they started doing tiling,
Mhm.
then we can go from there, I guess.
Okay.
But pretty obvious.
This is all the stuff east of west of Highway 3, right?
Okay. And Weckerly's is on the east side or west side of the highway?
East side.
Okay, that was that.
And Mertz has got a tile pump to the northwest of there roughly, right? That comes down into there.
Right where I pointed to. West for,
Okay, yeah, that's right.
So they pump it in, it's swimming down the
Okay.
ditch, and right into my land, right on my land. So,
Okay.
it's hard, you'd have to see it,
Mm-hmm.
so I got a lot of people that have looked at it now,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
but it's up to you guys, I guess, to,
You know, when was the last time any of that was ever channeled with a scraper? I mean, I can only imagine the amount of silt that's been in there over the years that's never been cleaned out, or I mean, am I wrong, or I just.
probably it's never been done.
Yeah.
Wasn't any reason to, right, wouldn't be a reason to. If doing that, you try to drain it somewhere, right?
Well, the main reason for the channeling is just to keep the water in one area. You know, we just had one not too long ago here where, you know, over the years, you know, it was basically it's hay ground.
Yeah.
And, you know, whatever, you know, you get these 3-4 inch rains, there's erosion that comes from everywhere. And it ends up, you know, in areas like this, because, correct me if I'm wrong, is this a little flatter type of land as
It's all
well?
flat. The
It is
whole area
flat, okay.
That's the James River.
Yeah,
pretty much.
okay.
The waters of James River. But you notice that what's tiled, I got pictures of it before it was tiled. It didn't look like that. Look at that. It's perfect.
Mhm.
But mine's gotten worse.
Mhm.
So I guess I gotta find out when they started, when they did the tiling. And only you guys would know, right?
I don't remember that as a permit, do you?
I
Was
guess
it?
that's been 10 years ago. I mean, I remember them
Okay.
being out there, they were tiling this up in January, February, they're using an excavator to break the frost line because they were out there trying to tile that, but was that,
That was
okay, was that
like-
6 years ago or 10? I don't know, it's been a while.
Yeah, Michael has probably been 8 or 10 years.
Yeah.
I remember that project, cause Cole brought that to us.
And I'd say Mertz's was somewhere around that time, I wouldn't think that,
Okay.
you know.
No, I think Brooks is only 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
But you guys have to permit or something, right?
Yeah, if it's a permitted project, if it's less than 80 acres that they've tiled, then we don't have a permit. Cause that's what the law says, is that if it's under 80 acres, they don't have to get a permit.
But now with Weckerly's on there,
That's probably 320 acres.
Is that on the Wartner land?
yeah.
They used to call it.
But that's all, but that's also linked with Sybel, the stuff that Shales farm, because Shales are tied into that same system, or Sybel, Sybel. They're tied into that, so that could be a 400 acre system.
Yeah.
The one on the east side of the road.
So that would have a permit. Right? So then we.
That would be, yeah.
And I think Mertz's was I'll speculate that was probably at least an 80 acre project, maybe I'm wrong, but it could be under that, but.
For some reason, I don't remember that permit
Well,
coming.
it's a quarter section, but there was some farm land on it.
And Ellingson did Mertz's too, I think.
I think it was Vortex.
Vortex
Yeah,
did Weckerly's.
We did
Yep,
Weckerly's.
Yep, I remember that.
So Coles was a permit. And the 10th side one.
So which one is Rinke?
Me.
You're Danny's son? Yeah.
There's, Kale, do you want to see pictures and video, if any sense? I can pull
Yeah,
up, Kale can.
yeah, why don't we take a look at that?
So he has all.
I can pull those up.
So looking at that right there, this is all grass over here. Looking at that, did you guys buy that?
Oh,
But I know how this works is the sediment keeps coming down in there and the grass keeps catching the sediment and pretty soon it gets higher and higher and pretty soon the water goes around that sediment and it just keeps spreading out and out and that's just what happens. That's why I asked the question is when was the last time anybody cleaned the ditch out? Because we all see that in big watershed areas where sooner or later that sediment you just
But
can't
all you're
stop.
doing is pushing bad water down to the Gulf of Mexico, or America now, right? To the Mississippi deltas where all this will end up. The James River dumps into the Mississippi, the Missouri and then the Mississippi.
now is this Mertz's here, or is this,
That's what,
okay. So that's on the east side of the highway there then?
Yes.
that's highway right
There's my land.
on which side?
On the east side, north side of that road though,
Okay.
north side of the pump.
Now whose land are we looking at there?
Well, on the west side of the road there,
Yeah,
That's the highway.
that's Highway 3, and then on the west side there, Monty Fall has some, and Weckerly bought that quarter pasture, I believe, right? That he basically had blown through.
That was all pasture at one point.
Yeah.
Just recent, not so recent.
Yeah.
And then further south, that's some field area now too. But that's not the problem out that way. The further you go to the north is where.
so Weckerly's on the pasture right here that we're looking at, right?
Well, on the west side, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I guess what we're gonna need to do is we're gonna need to go out and take a look at this.
Yeah. See, that water's running there. And it's high enough to be on my land. Out of the ditch, I see it. But looking at it's not gonna take care of it, right? Not gonna
Well, we have a better idea what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
okay.
I had a situation just like this, just so you understand. We're just gonna bring it up down south, farm south of Bowden, and I had to go in and I had to clean this ditch right away. And know, you got the higher hills and everything coming, their water actually cut its own path. But we were having, problems with, you know, the field was flood out. So we had to go back in and we cleaned the whole ditch for a mile, and it solved the problem completely, because it was all the silt and sediment that was left in the drain.
There wasn't a problem before this.
There wasn't a problem before
No.
mine either.
So
But-
why did you have to, no one was,
I had to clean the ditch.
Yeah.
I had to clean the, you can see in that one picture, you see the water's flowing there, but, I mean, what's the, you know, on your side is the ditch, how much sediment is in the ditch? I took out a lot. I mean, I'm talking a lot of sediment out of that ditch.
The tidal pumps won't put the sediment in there. It's the big rains that the dirt washes down, and it keeps washing into that grass, and it just keeps building up and up and up. And pretty soon it's just like, you either gotta clean it out, or, you know, it's, you know, we just
so
find
you're
that.
saying rainwater is doing that?
Well, it's the
Oh,
big
more
rain.
so than anything else,
Yeah.
definitely.
When you see those big gully washers and you see the silt coming down from the hills, that's what's in your ditch. It's, you know, the water's sitting there and it's getting worse, and it's gonna keep getting worse until the silt's cleaned out of it. That's
Tom
just-
and I were just out on a complaint here, was that not quite 2 months ago?
So the ditch is my property. That's yours.
No,
To tell me.
you own the property up to the center line of the road, right? You pay taxes up to the center of the road.
Yep.
Anyway, we were out on one, this is hilly country out here. And basically, I would guess that there was anywhere from 2 to 3 feet of silt in this grass waterway. You know, that it just, when it get these 4 or 5 inch rains, it brings all this dirt off of the fields, and it goes right into, you know, wherever there's grass, that's where the dirt stops. But we will come out, we'll take a look at it, but just so you,
But today, at some point, you're gonna have to give me some resolution to it, like,
we will, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, this, you know, we invite you in to talk about this, and our next step would be, in the deal that you signed, would be that we would invite you and the landowner that you're complaining against to come in and talk about it, and then we would try to come to some kind of a resolution to take care of the problem. But we will, that's the steps that we go through when we do this. You know, so just, we do that to save costs to the county, you know, because, you know, if we just hire the engineer to go out and investigate this, give us a report, whatever, that can be $2,000 to $5,000. And I don't think you want us to be doing that. You know, when you pay taxes in Wells County, you know, part of that tax money comes to this board. And, you know, so we've developed a process where we just, one step at a time. You came in, you gave us your complaint now. The next step will be that we'll invite Weckerly's and Mertz's to come in along with you. We'll sit down and talk about it. In the meantime, I think that what we're gonna do is we're gonna go out. There'll probably be 2 of us that will go out, and we will go out and we will look at the area. We'll call you, have you meet us out there. And we will go out and look at the area prior to the next meeting, so we can hopefully get something resolved at that next meeting.
so in the meantime, while I'm waiting for you guys, the water commission, Bismarck, is coming up. I'm gonna ask them, they're kind of holding up to get something from you guys. But I'm gonna have, while you guys are doing something, I'm gonna have them too.
I don't know that they will come out
Oh,
until,
yeah, they're ready right now. If I leave here today, they'll be out here,
seriously.
seriously.
Well, that's weird.
No, that's their
And
job.
Larry, and if that's true, I think that's fine. Let's let the State
Sure,
Water Commission
yeah.
do the work on the investigation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I guess we've never seen that happen before. Normally it takes them, you
Well,
know,
this is pretty bad. This is pretty bad.
yeah,
You know, I'll just tell you, and that's not your problem, I'll tell you. I got land in Burley County in a quarter section there, which has like 158 acres tillable. It's $600 a year. this is $1,300 a year, more than double. So I got a piece of worthless land and I'm paying twice as much as Burley County.
Mm-hmm.
And the farmer, right now, if CRP doesn't take it, I should have an idea here pretty quick. I'm gonna find out as soon as I can.
Mhm.
If they don't take it, I'm stuck with worthless land, because the farmer can't do a thing right now.
Mhm.
But it's been farmed for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not unusual for us to see stuff like this. In fact, we've had stuff out east of town where I farm, where they had a main drain that went through the property, and they left it as grass, and pretty soon the drain was higher than the field because the silt would wash into that grass. And well, we killed the grass off, and we went in and we cleaned it and we farm it, and no more problems. Silt is a major problem, especially when you get down in the hilly area of the county, wherever, you know, it comes off these hills, you get these big rains. Well, like in 2019, you know what it was like down there. The amount of dirt that moves with rains like that is just,
So
it's
you're
horrendous.
surprised that the water commission would be,
Oh, absolutely, because we can't get them to do anything that fast. You know, it's shocking.
well, I've got a lot of aerial pictures, so that they do too,
Mm-hmm.
and some of my friends do too, through the years.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't look good. That's changed here now. If silt happened, it happened like in the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's got he farmed one year out of 4 right now.
Mm-hmm. The whole quarter
Well, not the whole quarter, like, I think it was 130 acres
that he hasn't been able to farm.
that he did farm.
Oh, he did, okay.
That 1 year.
Yeah.
What do you want them to turn their pumps off or to clean the ditch
I think that's where they pumped it somewhere else.
somewhere else?
That's one solution too.
Well, yeah,
I didn't do it. So,
I need to answer your question. You asked me about down south there, the drain, I said I cleaned it. You said, is there tile pumps there? No, but I wish there was. Because, like Brian, to reiterate what Brian said, the tile pumps aren't the one filling that drain with sediment. It's been the washout over the years, and since 2019 or before, we've had so much water running off of fields so fast, which we can't control. Nobody can control that it has filled these drains with sediment that bad. So, I mean, just so you know, no, there was no tile pumps that were in that drain. That's all from rains and washout going into those ditches and filling it. And I think I took 1.5 feet of sediment. So it had the culvert halfway plugged out of the ditch and cleaned it because the water was going into my field, making it salty, which, you know, it was drowning everything out, and now we don't have that issue.
so this meeting is being recorded, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And I don't have access to it.
Yeah, you can go and just ask these gals over here, they're the ones recording it.
Okay.
And, but yeah, sediment is a problem. It's a major problem. And it's everywhere. And actually,
I'm willing to bet that if you went out in the middle of that drain and just took a spade out with you and you just spaded down, you'd find nothing but that topsoil, that just the silt, and it'll be feet deep. Not 6 inches, it'll be feet deep if it's ever been cleaned. You know, and then from there, it just does that, then the water it takes another channel and it goes out, it's wide, that fills up, and then pretty soon it gets wider, and that's just the way it's gonna be, and it's always been that way. We've all got drains like that it happens to me all the time, where all of a sudden every 4 or 5 years I gotta get in and clean these drains out, because the silt, and this is a result of tile, it's just big rains and silt coming down these lower areas and filling it up, and it's my job to haul it out of there and put it back out, keep the water contained so it gets in and gets out. But otherwise, it'll just keep spreading, and that's just part of farming and where
So
we
you
farm.
don't get into a problem draining a wetland when you do that.
you're just cleaning out the
We're
ditch.
just cleaning out a ditch. We're not filling in a wetland. We're just, if if it's a natural waterway, you got the right to clean out a natural
So that
waterway.
ditch isn't that old, I don't think.
What's that?
The ditch isn't, that road has been improved here just recently, right? That's been done.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Was it put back down to grade where it's supposed to be? See, that happens too. We see that with the highway department a lot, where they'll come in and they'll do some road work. All of a sudden they end up putting dirt into your ditch, and then the water doesn't run again. That's a problem as well. And we've seen that along Highway 52. We've seen it on Highway 30 over here. Yeah, they come in, they do their road work. They're not fussy about getting things back the way they were, and they end up putting 6-8 inches of dirt in a drain or in a ditch that, now it blocks the water, and it sits there. Yeah, that's not unusual either. So, but
Larry, can I just make a comment about the procedure so that we're all on the same page? And this, Mr. Sauter, this is not to diminish or say anything about your complaint and your problem. I just anticipate you might be frustrated at the end of this if we're not all clear about what the limitations in the statute are of what the water board can and can't do to help a landowner downstream of a tile system who's upset at the tile system. And so, like Larry was explaining, as a courtesy, the board between now and its next meeting will invite all the parties to the table and attempt to figure out a resolution that's amicable to everybody. They're not obligated to do that, but that's out of a courtesy to try to help people get along. If that's not successful at the next board meeting, then the board's obligation under the Century Code is to investigate your complaint and determine whether or not these tile systems required a permit, and if they did require a permit, whether or not they have them. And if they required a permit and have a permit, then there's nothing the board can do. They have to dismiss the complaint. If they required a permit and didn't have a permit, then the board has to put the landowner on notice that they either need to get the system permitted or close the drain. But under the current Century Code, if you apply for a tile permit, you're going to be granted the permit. And it says right in the Century Code, and we can send that to you, or Tammy can get you a copy, whatever you wish. But it says right in there that the tile permitting process does not address downstream impacts. That's a property dispute between neighbors that has to be resolved with attorneys and litigation under the reasonable use principles that govern property rights between neighbors. So I just want everyone to be clear going forward, because I don't want anyone to be frustrated and say, well, this process took 3 months and the water's still coming on to me. There's just only so much the water board can do if the complaint is, my upstream neighbors are draining onto me.
So was a permit required in these two cases?
the one was definitely. Is there one for Mertz's too?
There was one for under Cole, I believe. When did Mertz's do theirs?
Don't know.
It's been a while. I can't answer that, but I know it's been a while.
Sometime within when Weatherly's did theirs,
Yeah,
it was around that time frame, give or take a couple of years at the most. But that's been in there a while. I'd almost be willing to bet it's been in there as long as, if it was the same year, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, who would know? Who would know?
I know all the minutes.
If it was under,
Wasn't the Weatherly one under
theirs could be
15?
under 80
Yeah,
acre.
that one was under Cole.
Okay, so we will look at, like 16 maybe. Okay.
This could be under 80 acres.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
could be, that wasn't a huge project, so that very well could be under.
You need Mertz's, you know.
And I don't remember that one either.
And I don't have one for that section, so that must have been under 80.
Come to think, but they just kind of did that bottom corner, that
So
might
how
only be a
would
30
we
acre deal.
know? Who knows?
If it's under 80, they don't have to, back then, they didn't even have a notification.
No, we didn't when it was done then.
So,
If this gets this far, obviously it deserves an investigation, and we can get more information at the next meeting from the parties. But just clicking through Google Earth, I can see in what's represented here as a 2021 image a tile system, but it's, you know, it's